All right, so you know how we're always talking about how manufacturing is changing? Well, today's deep dive is taking us right into the middle of it with a look at what it takes to be an equipment engineer.
Definitely. And we've got some great material from RoleCatcher to help us break it all down. They've got this whole guide on becoming an equipment engineer. Plus, they talk about how their platform can actually help you land the job.
Yeah, it's like they're trying to be the go-to resource for anyone who wants to work in this field.
It seems that way.
Yeah.
What really jumped out at me was how they emphasize that equipment engineers aren't just stuck in factories. They're needed in pretty much every industry you can think of.
Right. It's way more than just fixing assembly lines. We're
Yeah.
talking pharmaceuticals, aerospace, even the food industry.
Absolutely. It makes you realize how important these folks are. They're the ones who keep all the cool machinery running smoothly.
It's like they're the unsung heroes of the manufacturing world. But the guide also makes it clear that this isn't your typical wrench-turning role.
Yeah, you're not just going to be covered in grease all day. It sounds like you need a good mix of hands-on skills and being able to adapt to new technologies. They even talk about how automation and robotics are changing the game.
Which makes sense, right? Robots are taking over more and more tasks.
Exactly. They even mention these things called cobots. Have you heard of those?
Cobots? I don't think so.
So they're basically collaborative robots designed to work alongside humans. It's a pretty wild concept.
Wow. So instead of just fixing a robot, you might need to understand how it interacts with people.
Precisely. And the guide stresses that equipment engineers need to be ready to learn and adapt constantly.
It's not a learn it once and you're good kind of field then.
Definitely not.
Yeah.
They talk about attending conferences, reading industry journals, always staying updated. It seems like the best equipment engineers are always hungry for knowledge.
Makes sense, especially with technology evolving at lightning speed these days. Okay, so we know it's a demanding field, but what about the perks? What does the guide say about the pros and cons of working as an equipment engineer?
Well, they don't sugarcoat it, that's for sure. They highlight the high demand for skilled workers. Seems like companies are practically begging for qualified equipment engineers.
That tracks with what we've been seeing in the news lately.
Right. And they also mention competitive salaries, which is always a plus.
Okay, so good pay, high demand, those are definite wins. But they must mention some downsides too, right? Can't all be sunshine and roses.
Oh, definitely not.
Yeah.
They're upfront about the fact that long hours and high-stress situations are part of the package. Think urgent equipment failures,
Mhm.
production lines grinding to a halt. You've got to be able to handle the pressure.
Yeah, I can see how that could be intense. Not a job for the faint of heart, for sure.
Exactly. The guide really emphasizes the need for a certain type of personality, someone who's technically skilled, a natural problem solver, but also able to stay calm under pressure.
So it's about finding that balance between being a technical whiz and being able to handle the heat when things go wrong.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And they don't just focus on the technical side. They also highlight the importance of communication and teamwork as essential skills.
Which is interesting, right? You wouldn't necessarily think of those as being crucial in a field that's so focused on machinery.
Exactly. But the guide makes it clear. Equipment engineers often work in teams, collaborating with other engineers, technicians, and even management. They need to be able to explain complex technical information in a way that everyone understands.
So it's about bridging the gap between the technical and the human side of things.
Right. And when it comes to the technical skills themselves, the guide really stresses the importance of a solid foundation in engineering principles.
So we're talking about a deep understanding of mechanics, electronics, that kind of thing.
Exactly. But they also mention the increasing importance of software engineering, especially with automation becoming more and more prevalent.
Right, because it's not enough to just fix a machine anymore. You need to understand the software that controls it too.
Exactly. And it gets even more specific than that. They talk about things like programmable logic controllers, or PLCs, which are basically the brains behind a lot of automated systems.
Oh yeah, I've heard of those. They're like mini computers that control everything.
Exactly. And they also mention SCADA systems, which allow you to monitor and control industrial processes remotely.
So it's not just about knowing how things work mechanically, it's about understanding the digital systems that make everything tick.
Absolutely. And they really drive home the need to be a jack of all trades in this field. You need a broad base of knowledge to succeed.
It's like being a detective of sorts, right? You have to
Yeah.
be able to look at a problem, understand its root cause, and then find a solution.
Exactly. And speaking of problem solving, the guide also highlights the importance of preventative maintenance, which is all about anticipating problems before they even happen.
So it's not just about fixing things that are broken, it's about making sure they don't break in the first place.
Precisely. It's about extending the lifespan of equipment, minimizing downtime, and saving companies time and money.
That makes sense. It's like they always say, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.
Exactly. And the guide actually does a great job of breaking down the typical career path of an equipment engineer, starting with entry-level positions all the way up to the top. It's like a roadmap for your career.
Okay, so let's talk about that roadmap. Where do they suggest someone who's just starting out should focus their efforts?
They highly recommend internships or co-op placements in manufacturing facilities.
That makes sense. Get some real-world experience under your belt.
Exactly. Because while a solid education is important, there's no substitute for hands-on experience.
So speaking of education, what kind of background do you typically need to break into this field?
The guide emphasizes that a bachelor's degree in engineering is pretty much the bare minimum these days.
And are there specific engineering disciplines that are more relevant than others for this line of work?
They specifically mention mechanical, electrical, or industrial engineering as being great options.
Makes sense. Those fields give you a good foundation in the core principles of how things work.
Right. And they also emphasize the importance of continually updating your knowledge base. Technology is always evolving, so you've got to keep learning to stay ahead of the curve.
Which is especially true in fields like automation and robotics, where there are new advancements happening all the time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The learning never really stops in this field, which is actually pretty cool if you think about it.
I can see how that would be exciting, always being challenged to learn and grow.
Exactly. And to help with that continuous learning, they actually provide links to some really great professional organizations.
Oh, that's helpful. Do you remember any off the top of your head?
Let's see, there's the Institute of Electrical and Electronics Engineers, or IE, and the Society of Manufacturing Engineers, which is SME.
Those are great resources for networking, professional development, all of that.
Exactly. It's all about plugging into that community of experts and staying informed.
Okay, so we've talked about education and professional organizations, but what about certifications? Are there any that are particularly valuable in this field?
Oh, definitely. They highlight several, but one that stood out to me was the Six Sigma Green Belt certification.
Now, for those of us who aren't engineers, could you explain what Six Sigma is all about?
Of course.
Hmm.
Basically, it's a set of methodologies for improving efficiency and reducing errors in any process, including manufacturing.
So if you're Six Sigma certified, it means you're really good at streamlining things and making sure things run smoothly.
Exactly. And in a field like equipment engineering, where precision and efficiency are so crucial, that's a very valuable skill set to have.
Absolutely. Are there any other certifications that caught your eye?
Let's see, they also mentioned the Certified Maintenance and Reliability Professional Certification.
Which, as we've discussed, is a huge part of an equipment engineer's job, right? Keeping those machines up and running.
Exactly. And then there's the Certified Automation Professional Certification, which is becoming increasingly important as automation becomes more prevalent in manufacturing.
It's like they say, adapt or die. You've got to keep learning new skills to stay relevant in this field.
Absolutely. And speaking of staying relevant, we should probably talk about RoleCatcher's tools for actually landing a job in this competitive market.
Yeah, let's dive into that. So how do you show those skills off in an interview, though? It's not like you can just say you're good at communicating or working in a team. You've got to prove it somehow, right?
Exactly. And the guide actually addresses that. They recommend using something called the STAR method when answering those tricky interview questions, especially when they're about teamwork or problem solving.
Oh, yeah, the STAR method. That's a good one. For anyone who's not familiar, can you give us a quick refresher on what that is?
Sure. STAR stands for Situation, Task, Action, Result. So basically, you tell a little story about a time you faced a challenge, outlining the specific situation, the task you had to accomplish, the actions you took, and then, most importantly, the positive result you achieved.
Right. It's about backing up your claims with actual evidence from your work experience. So instead of just saying, I'm a great communicator, you'd give a specific example of a time you successfully communicated something complex to a team.
Exactly. It makes your skills feel real and tangible to the interviewer. So speaking of showcasing your skills, let's talk about how the equipment engineer career path actually unfolds. We've touched on the entry-level and junior stages, but what's next on the horizon for someone looking to move up in this field?
Well, according to the guide, the next rung on that ladder is senior equipment engineer. So these are folks who've got a solid number of years of experience under their belt. They really know their stuff, what sets them apart at this stage.
At that level, It's less about just doing what you're told and more about taking the reins, becoming a leader. The guide emphasizes that senior equipment engineers are often the ones leading the design and development of complex machinery, seeing a project through from that initial idea all the way to completion.
So they might be sketching out the blueprints for a brand new piece of equipment, figuring out all the technical details, making sure it fits seamlessly into the overall manufacturing process.
Exactly. And it's not just about the technical design either. They might be overseeing the actual construction and installation of the equipment,
Yeah.
troubleshooting any issues that pop up, making sure it meets all the safety regulations. They could even be the ones training those junior engineers on how to use the new system.
It sounds like a lot of responsibility. They need to understand not just the machinery itself, but also the big picture of how it all fits into the manufacturing process as a whole.
Absolutely. And that also means they're making bigger decisions. The guide mentions things like budget allocation, resource planning, even negotiating with vendors. That's a whole other skill set.
Right. It's not just about being a technical expert anymore. You need those project management and people skills, too. Quite a journey from those early days of shadowing senior engineers and doing routine maintenance checks.
You got it. The guide really emphasizes that increased autonomy and leadership at the senior equipment engineer level. They even use the phrase driving innovation, which I think perfectly captures the spirit of what they do.
It's like they're not just solving problems anymore. They're the ones coming up with innovative solutions and leading their team to success. So let's say you've reached the pinnacle of your career. You're the go-to expert, the Yoda of your department. What then?
Well then you've reached the esteemed position of principal equipment engineer. This is where it gets really interesting.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more about what makes this role so special.
Well, imagine having the responsibility of shaping the entire equipment engineering strategy for an entire company. That's what these folks do. They're thinking long-term, big picture, years down the line.
So not just focused on today's problems, but anticipating the challenges of tomorrow.
Exactly. They're looking at industry trends, evaluating new technologies, figuring out where to invest resources for maximum impact.
It sounds like they need a deep understanding of not just the technical side, but the business side of things too.
Absolutely. They're the bridge between the engineering team and upper management, making sure everyone's on the same page. They might be presenting to the board of directors one day, mentoring junior engineers the next day. It's a dynamic role that requires a versatile skill set.
It's inspiring to see how far you can go in this field, starting with those hands-on tasks and eventually becoming a strategic leader who's shaping the future of the company.
Right. And the guide emphasizes that continuous learning is essential throughout your career, but it becomes even more critical at this level. Principal equipment engineers really need to stay ahead of the curve to thrive.
Especially with fields like artificial intelligence and machine learning changing the manufacturing landscape so rapidly.
Absolutely. It's an exciting time to be in this field, but it's not for the faint of heart. You've got to be comfortable with change and always eager to learn new things.
So, to sum it all up, it seems like a career in equipment engineering offers a clear path for growth, with increasing responsibility and opportunities for leadership along the way. But no matter what stage you're at, having that passion for problem solving, that love of technology, and that commitment to continuous learning, those are the keys to success.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And for those who are ready to embark on this journey, the resources offered by platforms like RoleCatcher can be incredibly valuable.
Absolutely. They seem to have a knack for making the job search process a little less daunting. So let's dive into that aspect a bit further. We've touched on some of their key features, but I'm curious to explore how they can actually help someone land their dream job in this competitive market. It really is impressive, all the ways technology is changing how we find jobs these days.
It's kind of mind-blowing, right?
Like, remember when you just used to polish up your resume and send it off to a bunch of companies?
Oh, yeah. And then you'd wait by the mailbox hoping to get an interview?
Exactly. Now it's all algorithms and online profiles and digital networking. But RoleCatcher seems to have a good handle on how to navigate it all.
They really do. Like you were saying, they've got that feature, RoleCatcher Copilot AI. I think that's the one that really caught my eye.
Yeah, the one that analyzes job descriptions and then suggests how you should tweak your resume to make it stand out.
Yes, that one. It's like having a secret weapon in your job search.
Right, because who knows what those applicant tracking systems are really looking
Oh,
for.
right. It's a bit of a black box.
Exactly. But RoleCatcher seems to have figured out how to crack the code.
It seems like it. And they don't just stop at the resume either. They've got that whole interview prep section that's pretty awesome.
Oh, yeah. with tons of practice questions.
Tons. All categorized by career path and skill set. So you know you're practicing the right stuff for the job you want.
That's so smart. And didn't you say they even have AI that gives you feedback on your answers?
They do.
Hmm.
If you get the AI subscription, at least, it's like having a personal interview coach giving you pointers on your delivery and everything.
That's wild. Talk about taking interview prep to the next level.
Right. And they even have video practice, which is so helpful these days with so many interviews happening virtually.
It makes sense because interviewing over video is a whole different ballgame. You've got to think about your background, your lighting, making eye contact through a screen. It's tricky.
Oh, for sure. But having that practice beforehand can make a world of difference. It can really boost your confidence too.
Absolutely. Because confidence is key in any interview, right? But, even with all the technology in the world, I still think good old-fashioned communication skills are what really make an equipment engineer stand out.
Oh, 100%. The guide even talks about how important it is to be able to explain complex technical stuff in a way that anyone can understand, not just other engineers.
Right, because at the end of the day, you're often going to be working with people who don't have that deep technical knowledge.
Right. Whether it's clients, managers, or even teammates from different departments. You've got to be able to get your point across clearly and concisely.
It's about being a good storyteller, too, in a way. Being able to paint a picture with your words and bring those technical concepts to life.
Absolutely. And as you move up in your career, those leadership and communication skills only become more important.
Makes sense. You might be managing teams, mentoring junior engineers, or even presenting to the CEO.
Exactly. You need to be able to inspire and motivate people, not just fix machines.
So for anyone out there who loves tinkering, figuring out how things work, but also enjoys working with people and maybe even has a bit of a creative spark, well, equipment engineering might be the perfect fit.
I think so. And with platforms like RoleCatcher out there, taking that first step into the field feels a little less daunting.
Absolutely. So if you're ready to dive into a career that's challenging, rewarding, and constantly evolving, equipment engineering might be just the ticket.
And with the right tools and resources, you'll be well on your way to a successful and fulfilling career.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Well, that wraps up our deep dive into the world of equipment engineering.
It was a good one.
I had a blast.
Me too. Always learning something new with these deep dives.
Me too. And hopefully our listeners did too.
Fingers crossed.
Until next time.
See ya.